Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities Show. We are recording on Thursday, the 17th, about 2 hours after the close. My name is Ben Maldonado. As always, I'm here with Barry Hederachi. And today we have the Easter special. Easter's
Mhm.
coming up this weekend. Barry and I were talking beforehand. It feels more like Halloween, and like this market, it's either going to be trick or treat. There's
That's
no
what it feels
halfway.
like.
There's no
Yeah.
halfway.
Mm-mm.
Really difficult couple of days trading if you were trying to day trade because we just could get no trends going, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you could see on the S&P chart you got there on the daily that we just kind of been winding up here for almost a whole week.
Other than that Globix move, if you take that out, we're just sideways.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
sideways. And I was looking which we'll go over on the NQs. We've only had
Mm-hmm.
one up bar since the low.
Mm-hmm.
One. What does it all mean? We'll try and get the clues, find the Easter eggs in the chart and see what story it paints and price is what we go by. So let's dive in. The interesting thing too, Barry, is we got a lot of commodities to go over today. So
Mm-hmm.
it was very unexpected when I was reviewing them, but a couple things look like they bottomed and we added to the list of things we'll review today.
All right. Let's get rolling then.
Yeah, let's roll.
Let's start with the SPX, since this is the chart that helped us sort of get all the points on the way while we were up there, up above. And now coming into the drop, I mean, obviously, if you guys have been watching, we called all these turning points, called a low here. And now this is already the tough part, right? Between after the low or high, it's in between time. Where we left off was, I mean, the reasonable stance here was to look at this 90-degree level, which is 54.17, and to say that, till we can settle above that, market's going to be more or less soft. Not necessarily weak, but softer conditions, right? More likely to catch the downdraft than the updrafts. And it looks like that's kind of what happened. We also were keeping an eye on the 53.15 level, and you can see Wednesday, Thursday, we really couldn't really stay above that either. It was looking rather weak, and we definitely couldn't hold above 54.17. So it's on the weaker side, but we're really not doing much. Okay, that's where we are now. So we're trying to figure out what's going to happen next week, what's most likely to happen. If you guys just take the inside day rule, obviously taking out Friday's high or low, you really want to keep an eye on it because we could actually roll with that. So let's keep an eye on that. That's what I have for the cash. And the
Thursday's high or low. Thursday's high
Thursday,
or low,
sorry,
right?
yeah, Thursday's high or low. Exactly, exactly. I'm already on Friday mode there, Ben. Don't ruin it for me.
It does feel like a Friday, boy.
It does, especially when it's all in your head, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we're recording. So anyway, hey, look, going into the front month, it's pretty much the same story. We're keeping an eye on this 90, which is a key level. And you can see it was actually weaker than in the cash. We were bumping up against it. We really couldn't do much. So that's where the resistance level is. We talked about it. We talked about it last week. It's around 55, let's say 55.07. That's where that number is. So you guys have it. And you guys already have the one for the SPX. And we're kind of triangulating. Ben, you were talking about that big triangle that's building up in the shorter term charts.
Yep.
And it's kind of apparent here. It's happening here. Again, we also have that inside day that turned out to be today's price action. So anytime, we're going to take the high or low out, you want to be really on that to watch the price action in the shorter term, because the probabilities are we're probably going to roll with that in that direction. So that's something to watch. This is the ES continuous chart, pretty much the same story. Looks more like the cash chart, probably because it's the continuous chart. See what else we got. Not much there. We already talked about it. Okay, so the Dow, this is the Dow futures, is 41,348. We talked about last couple of times, well, ever since we got under it. And I was talking about how that's a major resistance. And of course, the next level above that would be the full square, 216-degree square. That's about 42, let's say 42,600. well, we didn't even get close to 41. So, and we dropped below the 50%. There's a key level. And if we were to even try for a higher price, we would have closed above that, or at least hung out above that. We really couldn't hold. You can see maximum really one day to make up some air above it, right? And then last Friday, and that was it. Not Friday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and that was it. After that, we kind of broke down. Again, it's kind of closing on a weaker footing. And XPX, same thing, weaker footing. Let's look at a couple more charts. Here's the it's a front month with the square running from the December high. And we've also been watching this very closely because of the timing and the fact that December high was sort of the big high that came in on a lot of the higher time frames, the weeklies and the monthlies, and we were really watching that closely. That never got taken out. So we're also watching that from that high. And we did the 90 we were looking at, and we came down into that low, close enough for a square, but not quite. But on the pullback, definitely, stalled like it hit a wall at 55.17, which is the 90 degrees down from the December high. And you can say it's 90 by 90, from the high. We really, we hit that wall, stopped, and after that, just kind of been going in circles, but looking weak, right? Again, we talked about the inside day there. So that's what we have. Now, obviously, all of this has to mean something. So my take for next week. So let's jump to the 30-minute chart and take a quick look at all the exciting price action this week. Well, not a whole lot to talk about, but I think the little that happened meant a lot. We left off with this 54.76 last week. And remember when we came up to this high, really couldn't hold about 55.04, 54.76. That was like the main key level. And coming on the 14th, we tried, we really couldn't do it. And our whole point was, as long as we're below that, we're going to be weak, especially if we lost 54.31. And that's what we posted on X. And sure enough, it was after the markets a little bit, but anyway, we dropped down, really couldn't get back up got above 54.31 afterwards. So that was just getting stuck right there. And breaking below 53.86 was the dangerous part because we kind of lost that 50% of the square. And that's when we went all the way down to 52.53, found support exactly on that line. It's a quarter line. And then some support at the 270, which is this zone I marked out back when we were talking about around the 410, 411, 49, all that price action was right at that same level. So it's at 52.88 to 5300 level. So that's kind of what happened. We had a couple of exciting drops. Unfortunately, some of it was at middle of the night. Other stuff was a little bit early. But anyway, that was the kind of week it was. But the levels helped us stay the course and watch our positions. And I want to take a quick look at the Russell while we're at it, looking at reviewing everything. Now, the Russell, interesting thing is we really didn't get down to check the 90-degree level. This is a weekly coming off the 2020 low, 90 degrees up. It's kind of where all this testing happened in 22, 23. So that was 1672. It's pretty much where the 90-degree level is. And I would have thought we would come in here and take these out or at least do a false break below, sort of like how we did in the during the 23 pullback here. We haven't quite done that yet. But we did do 90 degrees from high to low. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation, right? We did do the 90, so fair enough. The move seems like it was a normal move. So 90 doesn't mean everything stops there, but if I were to put that up, you can see how we definitely came into 90. So that's there. But we didn't quite check these lows, didn't quite check the 90 from the low. And we haven't got anywhere near where the 50% of the square is. It's around 2036, let's say. So this is if you look at this, we're closer to the lows than the highs or even midway. And that tells me that this is still weak and we have a lot more work to do to even get the bearings straight to start moving higher. I feel like all the markets that we're watching, they're all sort of pointing towards, what's the theme we came up with? Like unfinished business, you know, and that's what it feels like. So I know you're going to cover the Nasdaq, so we'll take a look at it when we get there. But I think it's pretty much the same story, right? Not
Yeah,
much.
I think
Mhm.
you're right. Unfinished business is the theme.
And it looks like it. And now, one thing with unfinished business is you really want to be careful because finishing up the business could happen sooner or later, right? So it's really about timing and what happens. But I would kind of hinge everything on one thing. You really want to watch today's price action, look at the highs and lows today. It is an inside day. If we happen to take the highs out, today's highs out on Monday, you really want to be careful because we could sort of rip and try to catch these highs, maybe flush out these highs up here. So there is a possibility we run up because when everything looks really weak and everybody can see it, right? When it's too obvious, then normally it'll whip the other way before it corrects itself. And I think the inside day was kind of that could be an Easter egg of sorts where, if we take the high out, we really want to watch it and maybe even ride that thing because it could go and we're kind of set up for an ABCD if that happens. Not that we'll do that, but at least it's open to go up and test these levels, right? And break the 90 and act like we're going higher. But I
Sure.
think, and that's the trick or treat part. So we're kind of
Yeah, yeah.
combining both themes here.
There could be a big squeeze.
Yeah, there could be. And I think the inside day is a good way to watch that and measure it because if we take the lows out, obviously we have a little bit more work to do on the downside than the upside. So watch that carefully because even though we're not at exactly a 90, just the price action looks like it's about to whip a few people. And the way we can watch that is to watch the levels and obviously watch today's price action, today's high and low going into next week. And if you guys want to watch the levels really close, in the bracket, the bigger bracket is really 53, 52, 53 for support and 53.86 for resistance. That's a bracket. And the 50%, not 50%, but I would say the halfway point is this 53.43. If we can't really get above that, I think then it's highly likely, probable that we're going to go lower, maybe check the 52.16. And if we lose that, now we're really headed lower. And we could finish up on that unfinished business sooner than later. Now, if we can hold above 52.88 and and just be able to hold trade above 53.43, hold above that, and look like we're making higher lows and trying to move high, grind higher, that would look positive, right? And in doing that, we'll get closer to 53.86. And if we take that, then I say we're going to rip higher. I think then the squeeze could develop in that way. I mean, it could obviously develop after a flush, but we want to watch that 1-2 price action next week early on to see if we can catch a direction and not get caught in, looking the other way. That's what I have for the S&P. Dow, the indices, basically my take is that we could probably go directional next week. I don't think this sideways is going to hold because too many timing cycles came in, and we have a full trading week next week. So watch Thursday's price action, high and low. That'll be early indication. And of course, you guys can follow us on X, and every morning we post before the open the levels that we're watching and the sort of the price action we're looking for that day, along with the fuse lines. So you guys can be fully armed. And Ben posts a lot of other markets too. So it's all there. And if you guys like our work, please remember to subscribe, like, and share and hit the alerts. That helps the community grow. Let's move on to bonds. Bonds, tried to do a little bit of a pullback. And where we left off last week was about this 45-degree move, 16 and a half, 16, 17, saying how the market is weaker below that. And you can see it's weak because today we, couldn't even get near it and we reversed. So it looks a little weak. And I think it's going to remain weak below that 45-degree mark, 16 and a half. And so far, looks like we have lower lower highs, and I'm expecting the direction to sort of hold that trend. Here's the weekly bonds. 114 was our big level we were watching. I mean, we're 14 and 14.14 today at the close. Not a whole lot to give away, but breaking down below 144 level was a big sign. It's around 19 and a half. Bonds are, I think, going to remain weak. Well, this ABCD we can take out. So the idea is we continue to make these lower highs, and if this ends up becoming a lower low, looks like we're definitely going to test this 10, 106, 107, 106 and some change area. 106.27 is what I have, but looks like we're going to at least do a false break here.
And like equities, an inside week.
And an inside week. So it's going to be, yeah, it really looks like that was the marker for this week, short week, inside week. We'll see how things pick up next week. I didn't get a chance to look at the weekly S&P. And here it's pretty much the same story. It's just that, yeah, sure, we got the market, market pretty much stalled exactly where we were looking. I mean, that was our only support level, by the way, in this whole area. And we stopped there after that monstrous drop. And 52.48 was the next level for us to see if anything bullish can come out of that. And you can see we closed, just pretty much right on there, and it's looking a little weak. And not much to read when you have an inside week, like you said. We'll continue to watch that. And here's the continuous chart for the futures. Again, I don't have a whole lot to read here because I feel like it's still unfinished business and it could go a little lower. But this is here just to show that how we sort of isolated the high as it came in. Yeah. Let's move on to crude. Crude is behaving perfectly. We were looking for a break. I've been talking about this break for forever, all through here, saying that 61 really need to get flushed out before we start moving higher. And I think we got that. I think so. I think the lows are in. And now if you can manage to, I was going to say hold above 61, which we're doing. That little triangle broke to the upside. So I'm expecting it to go up, maybe come back and retest 61 or somewhere in between 65 and 61. That'll be healthy. We can, so let's watch that. And then if all that checks out, I think we should start grinding higher or blasting higher. I don't know which way, but the part we were looking for is finished. Now we have to see, how the price action kind of maps out the rest. But for
The big,
now,
big test of that breakdown area.
yeah, exactly. So let's see. But so far it's behaving perfectly, and we've been waiting a long time for this. Let's move on to the weekly. And you can see the bigger picture, pretty much the same story. And now this sticks out like a sore thumb. And that's exactly what we wanted. And let's see how much price action it's going to take to break through this and get on top of the 60-degree line, which is right around 67. So it's, we're not quite there yet, but the daily price action is what we're really watching. We want to make sure this is in place, and it really looks like it is in place. We'll pick it up from there and watch. I'm much more comfortable knowing that we had the break, had the flush, than if we were to mess around without that. So now I know, okay, at least one part of it's finished, and we're waiting to sort of confirm, right, on the daily basis. Anything you want to add to the crude chart, Ben?
No, it's playing out the way you had scripted.
Mm-hmm.
Now we just see if we can get over that what was support and now is resistance.
All right. And then who knows, right? How these can unfold. And there's a lot of ways, a lot of pathways, let's say. Here's gold, and I'm going off the 2020 low. We blew through the 50% level that we were talking about last week, coming off the 2022 low. And the next stop is 450 degrees up, 34.40, 34.38. And that's really it. We'll just play this square at a time. I think it's a safer way to do it. And
Enjoy the ride if you're long.
enjoy the ride, and anything holding above 32.53, we're in really good shape. Even a couple of ticks below wouldn't hurt anything. Yeah, gold looks good, but it's starting to hit that vertical phase. And of course, the vertical phase could go on for always a little bit longer than we think. And yeah, so we'll watch it. It's got a little bit of room left. And now the support level, the resistance is really at 34.38. Let's take a look at the weekly. So this is going off the 2020. Let me just say, we're going off the 22 low, and basis the weekly, we have quite a bit to go, 35.50. So that's a distance we can cover. We could do that very quickly or not. But we've been, you guys know we've been bullish gold ever since when. And now we're at the sort of the tail end of it, perhaps, because this vertical move can't go forever. We always call these out when they happen. And it's happening here. Like Ben said, if you're in it, enjoy. It looks like we have a little more to go. And even after all that little more is gone and done with, as long as we're holding above this 30.65 area, gold consolidating here. I mean, consolidating anywhere above 120 to 2,500 is bullish, right? And if we can consolidate above 3,000, it's just ultra bullish. And who knows from here, we can catapult to all new levels. Anyway, market's going up, is trending up. Not a whole lot to talk about other than potential resistant levels and targets, and that's what those are. Silver, not quite following gold, but it did, recover from the drop, and holding above this 31.50 level is not bad. I think it's positive. Let's see if we can do that. I'd say as long as we're above 31.50, 32, then we're in good shape and could go back up and check the highs. But if we, take out 32, I think there's a much broader consolidation happening here, and maybe to wait it out. Meaning there might not be a whole lot of trending left versus gold. Here's the daily copper, doing okay. We got about the 50% level. Our marker is the 50, and here it was 450, 446 was the level. And once we got above it, now we're just, grinding higher. It seems okay. It looks okay. And we want to look at the next pullback to see how we settle. So as long as that pullback holds above 448, 447, I think copper's okay. We're not diving into some bear market. We're kind of holding the levels, holding the pace.
It looks a lot like silver, doesn't it?
It does. Yep. It does. So silver is kind of industrial metal now too, right? It's like the old days.
No question.
So here's the weekly. Here we did hit 216 degrees up, and that was resistance. And at the time, I think what we talked about was if we can hold about the 480 on any kind of a pullback, then bull market's still fully on, and we should probably go up and test these again. But we didn't. We got all the tariff news, and we just broke through, held this lower trend line. Draw that in. Held the lower trend line and recovered the square pretty quickly about the 144 level, and we're kind of in between here. So the next level again, the one we have to go up and test is 480, and then that might be resistance for now. So I'm expecting it to make probably higher lows and to consolidate here till some kind of settlement comes. But I think the bull market phase is still there. We did have some weekly. Well, this is the weekly. We did have some timing that came in, right, Ben? You had some timing for the copper. I think you mentioned it like a couple of times a couple of weeks ago. Right about when this high came in.
Yeah, we had good squares there.
Yeah. So because of that, it's probably reasonable to expect it to consolidate for a little bit longer while the tariff stuff gets settled up. So let's see what happens with that. Let's move over to the dollar. We talked about, let's see. Well, last week we had some timing. This is 90 degrees down from the high. And we held these, with those that low we held even up until today. I would have liked, I would like to see even a false break going down into the 50% level, which would be 90 degrees from the high. So that would give us a 90 by 90 right here. We're pretty close, as far as that goes. And that would be around 98.84. Let's see what happens. Maybe we can do a false break and then flip around. But I feel like we're close to this is support. So, either we're going to do it here or, when we get a 90-degree move along with price levels that actually matter, if they don't hold, things really give out. So let's see what happens. I don't think that'll happen, but we have to watch both sides. So, but the low came in on a 90. So we're watching that very closely. And I think if we start breaking to the upside, the low might be in place. So we can trade that to the other side confidently. That's half the battle, right? Knowing, well, where's the trend going? And once we have that figured out, rest is not so,
No question.
yeah, it's a lot easier. So to talk about giving out, well, we have the weekly chart. This is the square of the range, which I think is probably the appropriate chart to use here. We have 98.25 as a target support level. And we talked about, if the 50% gives out, we don't recover quickly. Even if it's like a little dab below that is okay. But if we break down, then it's 98.25 seems like the next support. Then last week, I drew out this ABCD, and that brings us down into the 98.25 level as a support zone. So that zone goes from about 97.75 to 98.25. So we'll watch that zone, and that'll kind of satisfy the daily chart. If we can fly down there and flush everything out.
Like crude, it swept the lows.
It swept the lows, yes. Uh-huh. But we haven't had a enthusiastic reversal yet. Right? We don't have buyers knocking down doors. It's
Nope,
sort of
not yet.
holding. Yeah, not yet. It's kind of holding. We have 97 is it's a big level. That's a little bit lower. Yeah, let's watch it. I think that's all we can do for now. Since timing came in, I think it's worthwhile watching. Same thing with the euro. The low to high timing came in. We were very close to timing. It's a 135 at 1497. 1498 is the level of the price. We didn't quite reach that, but you can see, we're trying to triangulate, which is starting to sort of pause. So the question is, are we going to blow through this 90 in time, or are we just burning up some time to make up for the, consolidating here before the next move? I guess the question is, are we done reaching out? And I feel like we're close to it, this, yeah, I think it looks like it's close to it. You guys saw the ABCD that I drew out on the dollar, so we're somewhere in there, in the neighborhood. We have timing, but timing alone is not enough. Even though Gann said timing is everything, it's good to have some price levels to match. If we take it from this low, you can see the ABCD already hit the level, unlike the dollar by itself, right? And if I take it from the low, I think we did that once, and then it comes right up to then it's right at the 1500 level. So we're close price wise, and we already hit it time wise. So we might have it in place already. That's I guess that's my point there. All right, let's take a quick look at the weekly. So there's an ABCD. We really didn't take it out. Obviously, inside week. We'll continue to watch it. I think we know what's above. So let's see how we handle it here. 29, let's say 1300 is sort of the level, 90-degree level. And I guess the idea is to watch to see if we can hold above or we're going to break through that. If you reverse under that, take out this week's low, then I think the highs might be in place, mainly because the timing being in place and being close enough for, price was close enough, but the timing definitely came in on time, on the mark. So we'll go with that. All right, that's it for the euro. Let's take a quick look at the Hang Seng, because it's been doing great chart wise. Maybe not so great market wise. But last time we talked about this 19,450 level holding.
Man, look
And
how harmonic that is.
It's super harmonic, man. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. If I can only get the S&P to run like this. So, uh, and we talked about 2380. Of course, the market just speaks for itself. We went to the 50% level and got knocked back right at the 50% level around 21,600. And we're just right below. And I think, that's where we got the big gap also. Once we get above that, 21,600, I think it'll firm up a little bit. But I think as long as we're below that, it's probably just going to consolidate between that and 20,380. And I think long as it's above 380, it's somewhat positive because it looks like the worst of it's over. And at the weakest point, it only got down to the 72-degree level. So far, who's to say it couldn't get worse? But anyway, it's working fairly well. So until we get above the 50% level, I'm going to treat it as, as in weak hands, basically. That's it. Let me put it back to you, and we'll cover all the commodities and Bitcoin and Nasdaq and everything else.
Very good holiday coverage.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks. Well, speaking of unfinished business, you're right at the
Mm,
18,007, what is 746 level,
yeah.
and really, not quite above it, not quite below it.
No. And the thing here, you can see how heavy this index is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I was saying, when you were doing the S&P,
Hmm.
we've only had technically one up bar since this low.
Right. Yeah.
Everything else since has been inside.
Right. And
And
that's the up
so,
bar that you want to sell.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we failed at 19,200. Now we're trying,
Hmm.
battling it out here at this 18,750, but there's no resolution yet. We have two
No,
bars
no.
that crisscrossed it, and it looks like, if you step back a little bit, it looks like a big triangle forming here.
And I think the inside day rules applies even more here because of the way your squares are lined up. The 135 going right through the middle,
Yeah. So this
right?
today's high and low is the key next week. Watch
Yeah,
it.
yeah. That is
Get
the
the
Easter
clue
egg, it
which
turns out.
yeah, there's your Easter egg, right?
Hmm.
Um, the other thing I wanted to point out, 45 trading days from the high
Hmm.
is coming up next week, April 22nd. So do we get a high to high? Do we get a high to low? Let's see.
Hmm.
Let's see
Okay.
what we get there. But overall, this is it's a weak bounce. As I said, it's one up bar.
Hmm.
If this thing was really going, you'd have three, four, five, six up bars, but
Right.
we just can't muster it right now. So we play accordingly. I like the idea because it's a relatively narrow bar compared to the other days. Look at the high and low next week, and whichever side gets taken out first, that gives you the clue where the directional probabilities are best.
Hmm.
Let's take a look at the weekly. Weekly, at least, if a ray of hope here, it's sitting on top of this 18,186 level, and that's the 90, which is very important.
Hmm.
We have essentially had the full week above that. If we slip below that next week, God forbid we gap down next week and you get stuck below, that would be really bad. Because if we do, for some reason, gap down, it's going to be the first bar, even including these big down days, the first full bar below 18,186 on a weekly basis.
Hmm.
The other side is if we can, get a decent open, sit on top again, we potentially could get the push higher and actually have an up bar. Again, here this was the last down week, and this week is inside, so we don't even have an up week yet, which shows it's weak.
Right.
That 18,000 is 18,100, 18,000 area is critical for obvious reasons. Let's look at the weekly. And here's another reason why it's pretty critical. On the monthly, 18,200 is your level. Obviously, this bar is not going to clear either way. And this is the April month, and we're sitting, basically on that support. So
Hmm.
that 18,100, 18,200 is really, really important. If we start trading, multiple days below that, it's going to be a sign that we're heading, to the 15s.
Yeah.
So we got to watch that. The other one I wanted to show you was the calendar day. The key level is this 19,176.
Hmm.
And you can see we've tested it a couple times to no avail. So if we really want to get some upside going, we got to get above that. So essentially you can bracket it by like 19.1, 19.2, and 18.1.
Right.
Those are your, it's a wide bracket, I know, but that's sort of the state of play at this point.
Hmm.
With right now the Bears having the upper hand because we're failing to clear pretty important levels that would give us sort of the all clear that, hey, the probabilities now have flipped to the upside, which
Hmm.
could change next week. We'll see.
Right.
Anything to add here on the NQs?
No, good coverage. I think that we have the key levels and ready to go.
Yeah, yeah, it's
And
pretty
that
clear.
timing point you have next week, 22nd, 23rd.
Yeah, it's important to watch that because 45, if you've been following for a while, we use 45s and 90-day counts and week counts and monthly counts. They mean a lot. So we got to watch and see. It could pass an event as nothing, or it could be another, sort of signpost that we have to read and say, hey, this is an inflection point. So let's watch and see next week. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Talk about indecision.
Hmm.
I mean, 85, 280. We've been crisscrossing it for a week.
Yeah.
I mean, we had this breakdown. This turned out to be a false break. We shot right back up into the apex of the triangle, which is this, 85, 280. And we're just battling here. And it's a stalemate right now.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, to me, there's nothing to do here until it picks a direction.
Absolutely.
And we'll know the direction by whichever side clears first, right? If 85, 280 clears on the upside, we're going up to 91. If we get stuck under this, then we're heading back down to 79. And, potentially going to visit this target zone that we identified a few weeks ago.
Especially because, I mean, the trend is still down. So,
But 85, 280 is key. Watch that like a hawk, and you'll be able to figure out,
mhm,
which odds are better, up or down.
right.
Weekly, similar story. We've been bouncing between this stuck under 89, 540 for, a month and a half, 2 months now. Until we clear that on a weekly basis, we're just going to be knocking around here and potentially going down to 71. But there's no real impetus weekly basis for calling any upside until we can clear that. Otherwise, you kind of look, it's been, as you said, the downtrend's pretty evident, and here we're starting to stair step down. Did have an up week, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Although it's a tiny bar, I mean, it sets up for easy weekly reversal if there's any kind of weakness next week.
Right.
So let's watch that. Monthly basis, no big change. Just know that we did tap support and held nicely. But here we got to clear 93 on a monthly basis to really have, you know, the wind at our backs to be
Hmm.
bullish. It's not, Bitcoin's not bearish. You can see from a longer term perspective, we just checked these old highs, which is, the definition of a bull market. You pull back and then you go again. We just need to see the go again next.
Right.
Anything to add on Bitcoin?
No, I'm watching. I think the weekly chart is interesting. We got to really watch, not the weekly, but the monthly, the
Right.
circle there. And I think that low at 74,000 is really key here.
Yeah. Yep.
You know,
If we hold
so,
that low, you
mhm,
could say that the correction's done and now we're getting ready to go, getting ready to
mhm,
launch.
mhm. I mean, yeah, yep.
If we don't, then there's unfinished business and more work to do on the downside, either price wise or time wise, or both. On the commodities, let's talk about the commodities. I was in doing my review and was surprised to see life come into the softs.
Hmm.
Sugar and cotton specifically, we'll speak about them today. These things are super early, and we're pointing out when we review those, we'll be pointing out potential bottoms that came in, and I'll lay the evidence out and we can review it together. Let's first start off with the grains, which we talked about last week. There's corn, and you can see this week, we made a higher high this week and then basically corrected. But look at that. Look at the narrow range here, Barry. It was really, really shallow correction.
Hmm.
And it's above, the previous high there. So that's bullish, right? Nice structure there.
Yeah.
If we can reverse up next week, we could get some momentum kicking in on this thing. Because as you can see, the trend line, if we start here, it gets steeper, and then if we reverse here, we'll be able to put in an even steeper trend line.
Hmm. Hmm.
The key thing next week is to take out this week's high, which is around 490.
Hmm.
And then if we do that, then it's the full square, which is a 72 here, the full square at 523. So this we highlighted it last week on the higher low and the higher high. This week we're highlighting the fact that we're getting a little triangle forming here. If that breaks up as it should, because it's bullish, odds favor it will. It should give us another push higher here.
Hmm.
Let's jump to the weekly. You can see how the last week we had a big range, big move. This week is just sort of a consolidation week.
Hmm.
What we want to see here on a weekly basis is this half square at 517 get taken out, right? Because then we would have a series of higher highs and higher lows.
Hmm.
Also, this is a big breakout point, right? Because you could see going back to June of 23, price has been sort of in this half square. And if we could sit on
Right.
top of that, that would be the weekly sort of launching point. Let's take a quick look at the monthly, see if we got any clues from there.
Then you
The
want to
monthly,
move the thing a little bit to the square of the charts out. The kind of
oh yeah, this one's not square. Sorry.
right.
There you go.
There you go. Hmm.
The monthly here, we're gonna have to wait till next month to see if we can clear this full square, this 463. But as long as we hold above it this month, it gives us the opportunity for next month to sit on top of this on any pullback and then go. Good news is so far we've got a higher high on the monthly.
Right.
And so that's a potential monthly reversal bar, which we'll see over the next couple of weeks if it can hold. Any comments you have on corn?
So I think on the monthlies, you called out the lows as it came in. Now it's just looks like, I mean, this here is the first pullback, and now looks like it's well on the way. I think once we get established over this 450, 460, we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as you can see on the monthly, why this level is so important. Look at all this. This is
Hmm.
6, 7 years of price action down here.
And what a check back from the breakout, the first breakout in
Yeah,
22, going up in
yeah,
22.
yeah, yep.
Beautiful. Yeah, perfect.
And this is what commodities do, right? They do nothing except
Absolutely.
frustrate you for,
Hmm.
in this case, 6, 7 years.
And
They do a
24, you
false
didn't hear
break.
anybody talk about corn.
Look at this. Here's your false
Yeah,
break, right?
yeah,
Takes out these lows, false break, and then rips.
yep.
And this is potentially what's going on that you've been covering in crude.
Hmm.
You have this little false break. It wouldn't show up like major on a monthly, but you have a false break and then it just goes.
Right.
It's uncanny how often they do that. It really is.
Hmm.
All right, let's go to the next one. Next one is beans. And beans did something interesting, right? This week we were talking about this 1035 as the key level. Look at where the battle was all week, Barry. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And we closed just above it at 36.50. So it's trying to clear this full square, which if we do means we sit on top of all this, which is 2 months
Right.
worth of price action, take out
Right.
that high, and then we can go again.
Right.
And this looks like it could be. This is your one. First move is the ABCD. There's your first big pullback, and then here we
Mhm.
go.
Right.
Again, just like corn, take out that high, and things can start moving.
Right.
So we potentially have the momentum uh, wave coming in beans and corn.
Mhm.
Let's check out the weekly. So weekly, it's pretty obvious what the big level is. It's this half square here, right?
Right.
1060. We clear that, then it's on off to the races.
Mhm.
And you can see this has been going sideways, but look at subtly what it's done. You have a low, a high, higher low, higher high, another higher low. If we get a higher high, this is, as I say, we could get that momentum start kicking in. And when the momentum kicks in on grains, you get stuff like this.
Mhm.
So let's see. Could be another false start, right? We could come up to 1060 and then fail and have to burn some more time. But you got to be in it, to catch this because it's tough once it goes.
Well, yeah.
Only ninjas like you can get in, Barry, when
Well,
this thing's moving.
well, I was going to say it's very close to the trend line, the big trend line,
Mhm.
multi-year.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Once we take that out.
Weekly basis, 1060, big number, big number.
Hmm. Yep.
And we're within striking distance the way these things go. So pay attention to beans and corn next week. Let's look at the monthly. Monthly, it's the opposite, right? Weekly, we're looking above as the big price to break out. Here, we're looking below. We got to hold this 983,
Hmm.
which so far we are. It looks like, and it looks like we're working and could get an outside reversal bar on a monthly basis here. So far, so good. Couple weeks left. We have to see how that plays out, but we will watch that because
Hmm.
monthly, weekly outside reversal bars are very significant. So let's watch that.
Yep.
983 here on the downside is key. You got the upside levels from the daily and the weekly. But watch both beans and corn because they're in spots where if they get another push higher, could be a big momentum push. So let's
Hmm.
watch them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anything to add here on beans?
Now we're good. We're good.
Okay, now let's go to the ones where we're early, but I want to point them out because of the potential.
Hmm.
Sugar. Sugar's been in a down, pretty significant down move since like late September, early October of last year.
Right.
And what we saw this past week was we did an ABCD down completed because it's right
Hmm.
there. You can't see it because it's right on the full square.
Hmm.
And we broke down out of this triangle. And look at this, Barry. Guess what else we did at the low? A
What did we
false
do?
break.
Yeah.
False
Yeah.
break.
Yeah.
Sugar did a false break here at this low. And from here to here, we squared out 90 by 144.
Ah, wow. Okay. That's enough.
So this is 144 in time, 90
Hmm.
down in price, ended on an ABCD with a false break. Now, we didn't get the big reversal yet, but next week, let's watch. If we reverse, get back up into here, into this triangle, that means the false break will be confirmed, and this could be the start.
Right.
This could be the run.
It can be very quick.
Yes. Let's look at there's more interesting things to see on the weekly, monthly as well. Let's look at the weekly. So here's your weekly. There you can see the false break.
Hmm.
We're holding 1761 so far. Now, next week, what we want to see is we want to see the high of this week get taken out,
Hmm.
which is 1812. Trade above that, we will have a weekly reversal with the false break,
And never
with
look
the
back.
ABCD and the square, and it could run.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
look what it did when it did this false break here.
Yeah.
So you came down, false break, shot right up from
Yeah.
from 1760 to about 23, 24.
Yeah. That's huge.
So, and this time, if we get a fast move, we take out that big downtrend line,
Hmm.
from the highs last September.
Yep.
That's
No,
the
it's a good one.
weekly.
It's a good find. It's a good setup.
Here, here's your monthly.
Hmm.
Monthly's right on support. So as long as that support holds, the whole thesis will work. And it all starts with the daily, right?
Yeah.
We want to see reversal on the daily first, then the
Mm.
weekly, see if we get some momentum kicking in. But you got, like the Holy Trinity here. You got a square out, you got a full square, and you got an ABCD ending it with a
Right.
false break.
Right.
So that's sugar.
Hmm.
Anything you want to add?
No, we're good. I think false break, squares. What else do you need? Just the price to follow.
Right. And
Kind of
this
looks good.
also looks like, it could have been, this could be the sloppy fourth wave type stuff action in
Hmm.
here.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that was your failed fifth type thing. And now we start something new. But we'll see. Price action will tell us.
Yep.
All right, let's go to the next one. Now this thing's been sideways for years.
Hmm.
Cotton.
Yep.
Now let me walk you through what we've got here in cotton. So we had this. I'll put this in so you can see it. We had this sort of sideways channel that we've been in. You can mark the lows there for almost a full year, right? Where we came down and we just been bouncing sideways. And then all of a sudden it started making lower lows. There's your first drive, and then pulls up, second drive, lower low, another lower high, and a third drive. And then we do the third drive here. So we false break that, find support on 180, and reverse pretty hard.
Right.
So now, what do I want to see this week to say, okay, this looks like it might be a go? If we can take out these highs, which is around, call it 69,
Hmm.
and get moving up towards this half square, the next big area is going to be like the top of this channel, which is around 74. This thing could really get moving. You don't have to wait for all that to occur, though. The key thing is, can we take this high out? 67, 62, right? That gives us,
Right.
we had a false break, we had a high, we had a 1 bar pullback, and now we reversed. Can we take out that high, giving
Right.
us a higher low and a higher high?
Hmm.
So that's the daily. Let's look at what the weekly tells us. The weekly tells us this is a really important spot here,
Yeah.
this half square, and that's
Hmm.
at 66 and a quarter, call it.
Hmm.
We came down. We've got two inside bars. If we take out the high or the low first next week, it'll give us the direction. So the high this week, 67.23. So 67 and a quarter could be the point where we begin to move on this one as well. The key thing is this sideways move for like a year and a half, and then you can see it just started bleeding, and then we reversed hard. And when I saw that, I said, man, we got to pay attention, because this is how lows are made in these commodities.
Right.
Let's give you a look at the monthly. You can see it's early, but it's I thought it was significant enough to bring it to your attention. On the monthly, what's so significant about this? We did this triangle, then we were down, 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 down. Look at what we're forming here, Barry.
Hmm.
Potential outside reversal on a
Reversal. Yep.
monthly basis.
Yep.
Now we have a couple weeks to go. We would need to close this bar. We already have an outside bar, right? We exceeded the high and the low. If we get a monthly close above 67.80, it's an outside reversal.
And a decent 90 degrees down.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Looks good.
So they're both sugar and cotton are early, but the early bird gets the worm here, because if you watch it we can have a point where there can be an entry with a really good risk reward
Hmm.
before things get going crazy to the upside.
Right.
So that's cotton. Anything you want to add here?
No, we're good. Maybe some positions. So,
Yeah.
but
So
yeah, looks good. Looks good.
that's cotton. Last one to review this week for the
Hmm.
holiday show. We're gonna go over our short. So let's go to coffee.
Hmm.
Remember we talked about coffee last week and said, okay, this was decent support here.
Support. Yep. Yep.
Weren't surprised by the bounce, but look where the bounce went to.
Right to the 45.
Yeah,
Well,
now
50%. Yeah.
yeah, we I repositioned the square,
Hmm.
what I think is a better fit here, and this we bounced right back to the 50%, right to the triangle. If we reverse here, it's another short. You know,
Right.
this move to me looks like it was, you know, the bounce back. And now if we fail here at this half square, we know we've got a shot at least down to here again and maybe bigger,
Right.
you know, especially given the squares that have come in.
Hmm.
Let's look at the weekly so you can have a weekly perspective.
Hmm.
So we have an up bar this week, right? This was the big down move into support. We
Hmm.
bounced back. Here, the key level on a weekly basis is next week. Can we get below 358?
Right.
But this, remember, this squared out on coffee. Let me,
And as long as we're below that 384, right?
yeah, 384 is the key on the
Hmm.
upside. I mean, the squares were pretty like 90 by 270 type
Hmm.
squares.
Hmm.
On a weekly basis, it was actually 288 by 108 from the January low. So that was a really good square. Let's look at the monthly. Monthly shows all we've done is sort of come right back up into the low bar of this the low of this inside bar. Here you got 403 on the upside, 343 on the downside. The daily is you know, because these are such big moves, you got to really look at the daily to see what we're doing. Right? We broke down into support, pulled right back into resistance here from this big triangle and the half square. So if we get a daily reversal, or you know, you can even go down to the 4 hour if you want. If you get a daily reversal, you'll have a decent risk reward setup. Anything else you see here in coffee?
No, we're good. Good. Great. Great levels. Timing's there.
And I
We're
think
good.
the most interesting thing to me this week was the fact that, you know, these commodities like sugar and cotton, which have been, you know, pretty negative for a while, are suddenly showing signs of life. I mean, so
Hmm.
money is moving around. It was clearly out of commodities like for the last year or 6 months. Most of these commodities, you know, including the grains and the softs, you know, they weren't not seeing a lot of bullish activity.
Right. Right.
I wonder if this is a sort of a tide shifting there and they do follow through, especially the softs, and you know, then it's going to mean that, you know, money's moving from some place and coming in here, and we can probably, you know, decipher based upon like your reviews, like in the in the stock market and the other, you know, the
Hmm.
bond market and other places where, you know, where it might be coming from if they continue to show weakness. So
Hmm.
uh it's exciting to me in that the commodities have seemed dormant for a while, and I thought, you know, these things just aren't going to be responding. It looks like we're going to be, you know, just stuck in these sideways moves, or, you know, bouncing between support and resistance. But the way sugar created a bottom and the way cotton sort of did that false break, you know, there may be some action coming into that area of the market. I mean, what's your thought on that trend?
Well, I think it's true. And you know, these bottoms started to happen just about when the highs were coming in December in the stock market.
Right.
You know, so there's longer bottoms and so they're all kind of getting hammered out. there could be a shift, and we're kind of looking at inflation to be higher in the coming period or coming
Right,
years,
right.
and that would go along with that, right? With
Elevated commodities for sure.
elevating commodity, exactly, and energy. So
Yep.
it's with the theme so far. Everything kind of is holding together. So yeah.
It's a fascinating puzzle, man, watching how this money moves from sector
Mm,
to sector and market to market. And it's never ending because it's never the same. Even though the cycles repeat, the way they sort of play out is always a little different with nuances.
mm,
So
mm,
it's fascinating to watch.
yeah.
Anyway, great show, Barry. Hope everybody enjoyed the Easter show. Please make sure you subscribe, like, hit the alerts, share the link with your friends because we do want to grow the channel, and you guys have been great in doing that. And have a great Easter, everybody, and enjoy the day off tomorrow. And we'll talk with you next week.
All right. Good job, Ben. We'll see you guys next week. Take the extra day to rest up, and maybe get out of the house and get out of the desk, do some other
Yeah, for
things.
sure, for sure.
But next week, Bevan, like you always say, I think it's gonna be a busy week. I think this last couple of days of sleeper days shouldn't let us, like lull us back to sleep. It's gonna be busy again next week, I think.
Yeah, and
So
use Barry's inside bar technique because it'll give you that early clue as to if how the odds are shifting in terms of one direction over the other.
exactly. All right. Take care. We'll talk
All
to you
right,
later.
see
Mhm.
ya. Bye bye.
Bye.